Hello and welcome to another episode of Up Until Now podcast. I am JD,
I'm Andrew.
and thank you for taking a listen to this episode. We're sorry we didn't upload an episode last week, but Andrew and I felt that we needed time to process what's been going on in the world, and we're very relevant in this podcast. So we wanted to make sure that we were up to date with some research and do some research of our own and kind of really dwell into our own feelings about what's happening in the world right now. And for future reference, if people don't know what's happened, it's the Black Lives Matter movement has gotten another spark and has been flourishing and kind of spreading all across the United States and the world over the death of George Floyd. And not the death of George Floyd, but the murder of George Floyd. So we wanted to make sure that Andrew and I, had an understanding of what the Black Lives Matter meant and more research into the systemic racism that is present in the United States to really have a better understanding of what's going on in the world and trying to empathize as much as we can with our African American brothers and sisters that are out there fighting this battle every single day. So we wanted to make sure that our content reflects what we think and it's well researched and not just us going on a rant and being ignorant about all the things that we think that we know about this specific movement. And for me personally, I'm pretty sure it's the same with Andrew, but I didn't know jack shit about any of this. So I'm very happy that Andrew and I decided to really hold off on the content that we originally planned and step into this very, very important kind of movement that's been happening. So with that being said, Andrew, what kind of feelings and how have you been feeling this past week with everything that's been going on with the riots, the looting, the peaceful protest, and the police brutality overall?
There's a lot of things I've been feeling. At first, I was ignorant about the whole thing. Didn't even know it was going on until I saw a news channel and they were talking about, oh, there's rioting going on, and then I straight up said at work one day, I was like, "There's rioting going on." They're like, "Yeah, it happened like a week ago. How are you not caught up on this?" And I felt very stupid, and but it's horrible. I wish things didn't turn out like this, especially right after COVID-19, Not even right after, we're still in the whole pandemic situation and all, but as COVID was slowly, easing up on the world, this happens and it sucks.
Yeah, I think going kind of with that, I felt the same way. Like I felt very confused. I think when I heard about it, it was through work where someone said Minneapolis, Minnesota is pretty much in flames. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why is it in flames? Like, what happened? And I kind of just blew it off, and I was like, okay, that just sounds weird. Maybe just a fire started, and I never thought twice about it. But working in a university housing setting, it's very inclusive. So they're very up to date with different kind of movements and stuff. So when my black coworkers were talking about it, I'm like, oh shit, like I am like what? Like when did this happen? And then doing more research and the upsurge and overall boom of posts on Instagram and other things like that where I spend most of my time has thrown information at me and I'm like, okay, so this is what happened and this is what's going on. I watched the video of George Floyd and the officer. I don't even know his name. I don't even care to learn his name, but I watched the video with George Floyd and I was appalled. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like this is like you're watching a man being murdered on tape and nothing happened to the officer over a few days or a week after it even happened. This was kind of my personal wake up call and saying okay, I am very ignorant about what's going on and I need to learn more because a lot of my friends were making posts and kind of putting their personal introspective realizations on Facebook, on Instagram, and I was like, I wanted to do that as well, but I felt so ignorant and so just unintelligent on the matter, and I didn't want to just throw it out there just to throw it out there like a trend. Like I wanted to take time for myself and really understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it was for me. My wake up call was when I realized how much it actually affected not my personal life, but my family's life. Well, I guess that is personal life, but I didn't realize it affected my family so much because of the whole protesting and rioting that's going on. Where my family works, they were rioting there, and literally my cousin, the mall he works at, the other half of the mall got looted, and luckily, thank God, like, his half of the store wasn't part of that rioting before the police came. And my cousin Kevin, he called me the other day asking me how I was, making sure everything was good here. He told me that he found a post on Facebook saying people were grouping up or whatever to target his store. It's scary. Like, he had to call the police saying, "Hey, can you guys please just keep a patrol out, make sure nothing bad happens around here," and to any other businesses that's in the surrounding areas. Like, it's terrifying knowing that I have to call my parents or my cousins and worry about their physical safety now because of what's going on. And that was my wake up call, and I wanted to learn more about what the hell is wrong with the world and why it's falling apart.
So I guess I have a question for you specifically on that then. I'm glad you kind of brought it up. Is what do you feel about the looting and the rioting and the violence that's been happening? Like, are you for it? Are you against it? Like, what kind of thoughts do you have?
I am 100% against the violence that's coming out of this whole thing.
Okay.
I I think there's a big difference between protesting and rioting, and I think rioting is just a bunch of ignorant people trying to spread violence and do whatever the fuck they want to do. Because I've seen and heard peaceful protests going on and police taking forceful actions and stuff. But if rioting and the violence that they displayed never happened, I don't think it would have gotten that far. And it just doesn't make sense to me why they're burning houses down, cars down, businesses down, especially the innocent people. It sucks that there's innocent civilians that are getting caught up in this whole crossfire, and it's awful to see.
I think that's where, for me personally, that my biggest conflict kind of came. Quite honestly, I'm in opposition of you in this certain situation where I'm not 100% against the violence. I'm actually a little bit more pro violence than I am not. I think when you really put it into perspective about think about how long peaceful protests have been going on. Think about how long the oppression of the black community has happened. It's 400 years of oppression. 400 years, 300 of which were part of slavery, where they were literally enslaved, and then another 100 years being classified as second class citizens. You and I, we can never, ever, ever get in that kind of mindset where we have that much oppression on us for that fucking long. And yeah, peaceful protest has been proven to work, I guess. But if you really think about it, there is only one peaceful protest, one peaceful march that I can think of off the top of my head, and that was Martin Luther King's March on Washington. That's like literally one of the biggest ones, and I felt like that one that had the biggest impact, but it had to be that big and that grand in order for it to be seen and heard by the American people. Because as you well know, the way that the media portrays everything, they only show the rioting and looting. They don't show like the peaceful protest that's been happening because that doesn't get clicks, that doesn't get likes, that doesn't get, that doesn't get shares or anything like that. They want to show like the worst of the worst. It's hard to say this to you specifically because I know like your family and what kind of business they're in, but if violence is what it takes for people to get noticed and black lives and the black individuals for them to be heard, I'm for it. What I'm not for is like what you said is looting just to loot or rioting just to riot. It doesn't make sense to me. If people were looting and rioting like giant corporations like Target, Walmart, whatever, like those big brands, you know for a fact they're going to be bouncing back and they'll be fine. When I have a problem is like what you said is when small businesses are being attacked and looted because a lot of them don't have the same kind of insurance or kind of they don't have the cash or the money infrastructure that these giant corporations have to come back and just be the regular business that they are. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense, but we have very different views on it.
Yeah. I one of my friends, I think you and I both know who he is. So a mutual friend of Andrew and I, his parents have a store and they were looted. It's hard to be it's hard to understand and it's hard to see the kind of pain and the reasons why they're doing these kinds of things because again, like you and I can never empathize with that. Like we will never be able to fully understand the oppression and all the bullshit that's like against our community as Asian Americans.
Mhm.
And Andrew and my friend's dad was hurt in the riots because somebody threw a rock and hit him in the face. It was very difficult to see that and it was very difficult to read his post, but there was an update saying that his dad was angry. I mean, it's hard not to be angry, but he wanted to make sure and step back and say, I'm angry about this, but I'm trying to understand why they did this. And I think taking a step back and trying to understand the reasons why people are rioting and people are like being a little bit more violent with this is because they don't have anywhere else to go. The people that are sworn to serve and protect them are killing them, and people are afraid to go outside because if they have a wrong interaction with the police officer, that's it. Their lives are over. And you and I don't have that kind of fear. Like I'm not afraid of going outside and talking to a police officer. Like I'm not worried about being pulled over by the police and having a gun pulled on me because of the color of my skin or the way that my face looks or my eyes look. That's just not a fear that we have, and it's hard to for me this was like the hardest thing. It was hard for me to support this kind of violence because if there wasn't, there wouldn't be any publicity on it. It wouldn't have had made of a big of an impact. So I support like as bad as it sounds, but I support the violence against police precincts. I support the violence against big corporations like Walmart and Target because I know for a fact they can come back and they'll be fine. But again, like what you said, I'm not in support of like violence against and looting and rioting against like small business owners, especially like locally owned businesses. And it's kind of like a hard and very very difficult line to walk because essentially what I'm saying is like in certain circumstances I am pro violence.
So, difference in opinion because I personally feel like I'm more affected by this, or my family is more affected by this than you are, you know? Like, if the violence keeps going up, and which it is, my brother is gonna get deployed into the writing squad. And it's terrifying knowing that my brother's gonna go there and there's a chance that he might get hurt or worse, die, and he has to leave his family behind. He has two boys and a wife. Like, that's terrifying to know. And what, right now he's in the relief unit helping corona victims, and all of a sudden this happens and now he's going to get transferred over to the rioting unit because there's not enough force to keep people at bay and stuff. And that's why I can't support the violence because my family's affected by it. And I mean, I do understand what you're saying though. If there wasn't violence, their voices won't be heard, you know?
And that's the kind of messed up thing about it. Like people like it's such a huge issue and they're not being heard if they're doing it peacefully. And the people that are oppressing them are telling them the Black Lives Matter movement, they're telling them how to protest but not listening to the way that they actually told them to protest. So that's the frustrating part.
You mentioned that they're burning down police stations and stuff like that. I think there's something that we need to address, or at least I would like to address. People are giving a lot of shit to police officers and, security and all that stuff when not all of them deserve it. There are good cops out there, officers out there who do their best, who are doing everything they can to protect the people. And, it sucks. It honest to God sucks that there are just awful people in the precinct, but there are those officers and people of the law who are doing their job. And it's awful to see some of them and their families now terrified because of what's going on. It's horrible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm actually glad, again, I'm glad that you brought this up because everyone knows that there's good people out in the world. Everyone knows that there's good cops. This movement isn't about again, at the core of this movement, of course, there's outliers and those crazy, again, like you said, ignorant people that aren't taking it seriously or really thinking about what they're fighting for. But I think this movement is not about the police as a whole. It's about how the bad officers that you mentioned are not being held accountable for their actions. Like, there's a crazy statistic where 1% of the individuals, or 1 to 2% of cops that have been alleged of using excessive force have been charged, and some of them have been prosecuted, right? The
Mhm.
rest of the 98% have gotten off with just a slap on the wrist, essentially telling them that they can do these kinds of things with absolutely no consequences at the end. Some people don't realize that it's not against the police as a whole, but it's about how the police have handled these certain incidences of police brutality and not doing anything about it. And I heard recently that a certain statistic, even for like the Minneapolis Police Department, officers that have been fired for using police brutality have often become rehired back into the same precinct that they were fired from.
I heard that too.
Yes, that makes sense. Like, there's are good officers, there's good policemen out there. That should not and that will not negate the fact that there's bad officers out there that are not being held accountable for the brutality that they use against the people that they are sworn to protect and serve. That's the hardest part to wrap your head around. It's not against police as a whole, but as how the police have been handling the bad eggs or the bad police or the bad cops.
There's a bit that Chris Rock performed that really reminded me of what you're saying. Chris Rock was saying how whenever there's like a bad cop that did something bad, the people that are trying to defend him say, "Oh, it's just a few bad apples," you know? I don't know. I it just reminded me of that little bit he was saying, and I think it is true. Like it sucks that there are those bad cops, but civilians go to the police for safety, and
Yeah, but civilians that are not in the black community.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like if only if they were all good. Like,
Yeah. But here, let me play that clip.
oh, did you find it?
Yep.
Cops gunned down an innocent black man. They always say the same things, man. They always say the same thing. It's like, well, it's not most cops. It's just a few bad apples. It's just a few bad apples. Bad apple. That's a lovely name for murderer. It's like, how'd they get that one? Bad apple. That almost sounds nice. I mean, I've had a bad apple. It was tart, but it didn't choke me out. Here's the thing. I know it's hard being a cop. I know it's hard. I know that shit's dangerous. I know it is, okay? But some jobs can't have bad apples. Okay? Some jobs, everybody gotta be good. Like pilots. You know? American Airlines can't be like, most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples that like to crash in the mountains. Please bear with us. America's insane, man.
Yeah, so that clip kind of puts it into perspective. Like, there has to be some kind of change in the police force that says, like, we can't have bad apples. So there was another thing that was going around that you need more training and more schooling to cut somebody's hair professionally than it is to be given a gun and a badge.
Oh yeah. That's
Like,
pretty fucked up.
that shit's fucking insane. Like, people have to study for what, 2 years, a year to like cut somebody's hair, but it takes less time and less training to have a gun, to get a badge, and being able to kill somebody because you thought that they were a threat. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, like what Chris Rock said, and what we have been saying is, being a cop is hard. Being a cop is very, very dangerous. Like, we're not taking away that fact. It's just that there is no sense of There's no sense of accountability on those bad cops. They get rehired, they don't, or they just go out with a slap on the wrist and just they're free to do it again.
I mean, yeah, it's awful to see, and it angers me a little bit when, again, ignorant people that don't know what's going on, that just say things to say things, do things to do things, try to blame all cops. And I've witnessed some of those people, and it sucks that there are good people getting, bashed on. It's just awful to see. Like I have friends who are, paramedics, who are in the police force, who are in military service, friends and family, and it sucks that they now have to fear for their lives when they're just doing their jobs. And I know they're good people.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I guess like it's hard to do that, and it's hard to maybe push it to the other side where, yes, like they are feeling these things now because of what's going on, but just trying to imagine that kind of fear and that kind of anxiety about just walking outside, jogging outside, sleeping in their own apartment, or playing with a toy gun in a park. Having those fears every single fucking day since the day you were born, you were taught, be careful of the police, they will kill you. And having that mentality every day, day in and day out, like, I can't imagine that. You can't imagine that. And I feel like I'd be terrified to even just step out my door. And quite honestly, like, the cops are a huge part of that. There are episodes across almost every single recent show that's been released, like specifically like dramas, that deal with racism, police brutality, and other things of that nature. They're not doing that because it makes a good television show. They're doing that because it's real. It is something that Black Americans have to deal with every single day, and things that we don't. And the crazy thing is that, like, the civil rights movement of 1964, the one that Lyndon B. Johnson signed with Martin Luther King Jr., right there, like watching him sign it, paved the way for Asian Americans, for us to come into the country and become free and become first-class citizens along with them. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1964, 100 years after slavery was abolished with the 13th Amendment, in 1965, they passed the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965, which allowed us as Asian Americans and our parents specifically to come from the country that of their origin and immigrate into the United States, and giving us, you and I, the life that we have now. Essentially, with the privilege that we've had and the opportunities we've been given, are a part of white privilege. Like, we're not white. Like, I don't consider myself white, but we have profited off the backs of African Americans as well. And we can't be free of fault.
It makes sense, but I don't think. Did I say something that made it seem like I wanted to be free of fault?
No,
Is
no,
that what
no,
you're trying to
no.
say?
No. What I'm trying to say is that we don't have that fear,
Oh, no, yeah. I'll never understand.
and then we've profited off that, off the fear of Black Americans, and we don't realize it. Does that make sense? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not putting any blame on you. I'm not putting
Oh.
any blame on me.
I
But
thought you were saying that
but
because
the-
I just said something.
No. But the conversation, I feel like I'm just trying to open up this conversation a little bit more to, for a lack of a better word, to kind of have an argument on the podcast about our views and our outlooks on the specific situation at hand.
Well, I think we will have an argument because you clearly stated that you're pro-violence and all
Yeah.
that, and I'm clearly not, because it's just something I won't ever be pro for. But I do understand what you were saying. Like, We needed this violence to get something going, you know?
Yeah.
But again, I can never support that because my family's lives are at stake now. And no, I have close friends whose businesses got affected. And it's not just because of the whole business thing. It's just, it affects me because I literally called all of my family members just to check their safety.
Mm-hmm.
We have my cousin Sarah Richard. They live in the city. Joe that lives in the city. I called them just to make sure they were alive. And like it terrifies me to call them for that. I'll never be pro violence, but I understand.
Yeah. I mean, again, I have things about that too. So
No, you're fine. Well, that's what this is about. We're having a conversation.
I'm with you. I have a lot of friends and I have a lot of families that have do own businesses and that have been affected by this. But I'm trying to see it as best as I can from the angle of the black community. Because I think personally, I believe that I am a full supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, I am. I support Black Lives Matter.
There isn't really anything that kind of holds me back from it. Like there are a lot of things that like, oh, if you're like a lot of these stupid Instagram posts that like say like if you're not pro violence, then you're not pro Black Lives Matter, and that I don't think that's really true.
I don't think that's true either because I'm not pro violence, but I still support the black community. I support the change that should happen and that I hope happens.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a lot of the points that other people are afraid of, which makes sense. Like the threat against lives of people that are bystanders. Kind of flipping it on its head is like we're experiencing this discomfort and we're experiencing this fear, but we've only been experiencing it for a week.
We're kind of like third parties in a way.
And that's what kind of pisses me off is because we shouldn't be third parties.
We shouldn't be, but I mean that's just the real. That's what it is. We'll never truly. No one in the world will truly understand what blacks have gone through. And as a third party member, I am not pro violence, but I understand. You know, It-
With that being said, all of the violence that has been happening throughout the country was not always started by protesters.
oh, sure hasn't. There have started with just random people just saying, "Oh, let's go hit this place up."
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people are not seeing. They're not seeing that a lot of the violence, besides a handful of incidences where, again, like those group of people that are ignorant about everything and just want to destroy things to destroy things, are instigated by police even. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen all these videos that have been circling around with police brutality in peaceful protests about police brutality happening throughout the nation.
I've seen couple, and that's why I said there are some videos that I've seen where there are those police officers that handle it with violent forces, and it's awful to see. I mean, shit, there was a protest here in Bloomington yesterday. About like 1,000 plus people showed up around like downtown, and they called in like a whole bunch of indie cops to come down just to make sure it doesn't go out of hand.
Yeah.
But I heard it was like success,
Yeah.
whatever I guess you want to call it. Like there was nothing that went bad, and people's voices got heard, and so luckily it was okay. But like yeah, like I said, like it's awful to see like a peaceful protesting group getting hurt just because, even though they didn't do anything wrong.
To keep going forward with this conversation, I think there was a post that one of my friends put, and it basically said, "This is kind of like what white privilege looks like, and it's really sad and it's really bad that a black man died from police brutality, but the violence and the destruction of buildings has to stop." If you flip the two, it says, it's really sad that the destruction of buildings and property has been going on, but the killing of black men has to stop.
That's very well put.
And I think that's the kind of mentality that we're at, where even myself, like, for a long time, was the first one. And and I'm trying right now to flip it. I'm trying to understand what's going on through the lens of the Black community, because enough is enough. Like, it's ridiculous. So Andrew and I have watched a documentary that's available on Netflix that we highly recommend people watch. It kind of breaks down the systemic racism that's been going on in our country ever since slavery was introduced into the United States. It's called 13th. It's in regards to the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery. And it's a very fascinating watch, and I highly recommend it. It's about an hour and 40 minutes, but I'm on my second time watching it because it was just that good. It states that in the population right now, I believe there are this documentary was released in 2016, so the numbers are a little bit different. The Black population in the United States of America was around 6.5%, if I remember correctly. The population of the prisons in all across the United States, 40.5-ish% was African American. Like, that does not make any sense to me. Almost 50%, I'm rounding up a little bit, but almost 50% of people that are in the prison system are Black. And this documentary really goes into depth and detail as to why that percentage is present in the way that it is today.
We could talk about that right now. I haven't. It's pretty much, it all started with in 1994 when Reagan passed the bill, the crime bill. Congress proposed a $30 billion federal crime bill of 1994 that was heavily loaded towards law enforcement incarceration to deploy latest technologies and tactics to make communities, quote unquote, safer. And that crime bill pretty much allowed law enforcement to do a lot of the things that we nowadays consider abuse. And oh no, not Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. And then not too long ago, he addressed that whole issue, and he admitted that he was wrong for it, and he caused more harm to the future than he wanted, and things didn't turn out the way he had planned and hoped. But they were saying in the film that he should be held accountable. He's not really doing anything about it. He just addressed that, oh yeah, I fucked up. And from that, talking about the prison numbers, from 1990, right before like that was passed, to 2000, the prison population went from 1 million to 2 million. It literally doubled within 1 decade, and that's crazy to see. And like you said, majority of them were African Americans.
Yeah, that's like one of the more recent bills that have been put into place, or laws that have been put into place, to swear and promise protection, but the protection comes at the cost of Black lives.
Yeah.
It even like goes all the way back to the 13th Amendment itself. So the 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution in 1865, and it states that involuntary labor will not be tolerated unless it is in payment of a crime. They used that loophole, or racist white individuals in that time used that loophole to just arrest a bunch of Black people to make them slaves again. They would arrest them on the most pettiest charges of like loitering and just like the stupid stuff that we would never be arrested for, just to be put back into slavery. Because think about it, slavery was abolished, and the entire South of plantation owners lost their entire workforce, and their economy was left in shambles. But when they saw that clause, or that loophole in the 13th Amendment, they was like, well, fuck it, we'll just use this. And that's essentially roughly around when like the police force was kind of introduced to America. The bedrock and foundation of the police and what they stand for is based on racism. And it's based on race. Like, it's insane. Like, the first, I guess, quote unquote, police that was developed in the United States was Slave Patrol. They had volunteers to go out and hunt down slaves that have escaped. These people weren't paid. These people weren't like given a livelihood by doing this. They just did it because they felt that it was right to grab these folks back and put them back because they were property. There's something called, I think it's hard to explain, but it's something called the implementation of the Southern Strategy, where they use new laws and new bills to still keep a war on the black community or the people of color. And there was a quote in the documentary that Andrew and I watched, and the quote is here right now.
There's really no understanding of our American political culture without race at the center of it.
And in 1981, just before Reagan assumed the presidency, his campaign strategist Lee Atwater was caught on tape explaining the Southern Strategy.
In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this. All right, I won't hear it. You start out in 1954 by saying this. By 1968, you can't say that hurts, it backfires. So you say stuff like force busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites.
And that last part was blacks get hurt worse than whites. And this was in 1961. It was just 40 years ago. And the fact that slavery ended in 1865 and there still hasn't been enough change where a white supremacist or white supremacy is still pushing down on the African American community and even just the people of color in general just for their personal gains. Like, it hasn't changed. And I think that's where the anger and all the frustration come out from all these protests and riots and looting, is that in 400 years, nothing has changed. It's still black versus white, and white has all these systems and all these laws that help protect them, but there's nothing protecting the black community.
I agree, and there was something from the documentary that I remember saying, the country fears strong black leaders, people like Martin Luther King, people like Malcolm X, Fred Hampton. But that's so different from white leaders. They were saying how all three of those names that I mentioned, MLK, Malcolm, Fred, they had to go through the FBI, the police, all of Congress. They had to go through all of that. They were being attacked by all of them, and you don't even see like a fraction of that against like white leaders. And it just shows that they're scared of them, as they should be, because
They're a threat to their livelihood and the way that they've been doing things for however long.
yeah, like their crime is uniting the people and giving them a voice, the voiceless a voice.
And righting the wrongs that they themselves, as white supremacists, whether they believe it or not, have implemented on the community of color.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew and I highly recommend that you guys watch this documentary if you're having really a lot of trouble about what systemic racism is, because it kind of goes over everything that has been going on over the past few years. There is another video that I watched that made it a little bit, for lack of a better word, cuter. That's been floating around Instagram, where it's like little cartoon people, but they show a lot of the systemic racism that has been involved in not just like police forces, but also like education and banks and financial reasons as well, on how they continually oppress the African American community. If you guys want that video, please reach out to us on Instagram, and I would be more than happy to send it your way. It really helped me understand what was going on in a more concise way, and it's like a good overview of like what's going on. Now, with what's happening today, I felt that, I don't know if you feel it too, but I feel like it's different this time. It's different. Like the riots and the protests feel a little bit different than the last time, like in, I believe, 2014 in Ferguson. Like, it feels different from any other time in history where that I can recollect. It just feels different. And I'm not sure if that's the same as you.
It does a little bit, because people are being heard now. People aren't as afraid anymore. And Will Smith said it best, abuse, racism, it never went away. It's just being filmed now. And the voiceless are screaming louder. And it does feel different. And, I pray to God that something does change from this.
No, I agree. I'm the same way. And I was kind of thinking of the ways as to why it felt different. And I think there was a lot of things. I think one big thing, of course, is COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in. We are in the worst economic state as we've ever been. Unemployment is through the roof. And the crazy thing is, unemployment is through the roof, but it has affected the Black community more than any other community. They are the ones that are losing their jobs the fastest. This pandemic really screwed over the people of color and their communities, specifically the Black community. That was like kind of like hit number one, where like that was just adding to everything else that's been going on for the past 400 years. I was in a Zoom conference kind of thing recently where they talked about 3 pillars of racism. And I think each pillar of racism was affected and shown in the last couple weeks. One of the pillars is overt racism that was shown by Ahmaud Arbery, who was just jogging in his neighborhood and was hunted down and shot and killed by a father and a son who were white. There is systemic racism, that's essentially police brutality against the Black community, and that happened with George Floyd. And there's something called postmodern racism, which is a little bit harder to understand, but the best way to do it is the Amy Cooper incident in Central Park in New York, where, if you guys do not know, it was when a Black individual was in the park bird watching, and he asked a white woman if she can put her dog on a leash. The white woman literally called the cops, saying that she was being harassed and she feared for her life because a Black man was intimidating her. Watch the video, complete and utter bullshit, but the white woman knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew exactly what the police would do for her. She saw the color of the Black man and knew she had more power over him, and used the police to strike fear into the Black man. Like, that's just some racist ass shit. And I think all 3 of those were very profound in the last couple of weeks. And the systemic killing of George Floyd ignited that everything was just like, you know what? Fuck this. We're done. This is ridiculous. And people are risking their lives outside of like Black Lives Matter protests to gather together in the middle of a pandemic. Like, that's how serious they are. They're meeting in the middle of a pandemic where they know that 6 feet apart is not really going to happen. But they're gathering together because they know that this is important and just as important as well. Those are the kinds of reasons why I feel the protests have been like feeling different than they were before. And like what you said, I hope that it something comes of it, because again, like, I was just as ignorant, and I'm pretty still ignorant about what's going on in the world. Like, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to take steps and bettering myself to become a better ally to the Black community and the Black brothers and sisters that I have. There's a problem here, and there's nobody can deny it.
I'm part of the problem. I'm not doing anything to actively support this whole thing. But like, I do support it. But I mean, it's terrible that I'm not actively doing anything to do it. I mean, this is a step. This podcast. Again, I mean, me and JD have mentioned it a couple times now. We were very ignorant of this whole thing, and I don't like to speak about things if I'm not confident on it. Unless if it's like something bullshit, we can. But something as serious as this is, especially when honestly we have no place until me and JD fully knows it, or at least this is how it goes for me. Until I fully understand what's going on, I'm not gonna just throw out my ignorant opinion on it, because that's bullshit.
That is the reason why you and I took so much time before recording this episode to really understand, dwell on what we feel is going on, and just trying to get a better understanding. Again, I wish I said this earlier, but Andrew and I, we're not educated in this. We're not educated in the unlearning and relearning of racism and how that has affected our lives and our thoughts about how we live. We 100% contributed to the problem. I'm not going to lie, I made some comments in the past that were not mine to make. I have said things that I'm not proud of. I have said things that I'm very embarrassed about. And publicly stating it and taking that first step and realizing that I am a part of the problem and realizing that I have made mistakes in the past is not going to change the fact that I'm not going to make mistakes in the future. I'm pretty sure in this podcast, even Andrew and I have said some things that were incorrect. 100% guarantee that we said something in here that it was offensive or that we didn't realize was adding to the problem. And if that's the case, please reach out to us. Please give us an email, send us a DM on Instagram, because we want to know what we're doing wrong so that we can fix it in the future, so that we can become better people and we can be on the path to anti-racism as whole individuals. I mean, me specifically, I know for a fact that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to say the wrong things. I want people to know that I'm doing my best. I'm trying to learn. And if you can just teach me, I'd be more than willing to listen.
Educate us.
Educate us. As one of our, I think as our bio on Instagram says, we're just two dumbasses trying to live life. Like, there are a lot of things that Andrew and I don't know. There are a lot of things that we're ignorant about. But if we made a mistake in this podcast about what we said or, what we thought, please don't blame us. Please don't yell at us, and please be nice, because we're still learning. We're still developing. And that's the kind of message that I want to leave with, and just say that there are a lot of things that we didn't cover. There are a lot of things that we didn't talk about. But that doesn't mean that we're just going to stay silent on it. I think there are going to be a lot more episodes in the future where we talk about things like this. We talk about our privileges as Asian Americans and being so close and being able to sit with white people and have our voices heard, and how we feel like we can use that to better our community and better help our Black brothers and sisters that are out there that are struggling way worse than us. So we just ask for your patience. We ask that if we said anything wrong in this podcast, please let us know, call us out on it, because we will own up to our mistakes. We will.
You were saying that we might have offended someone for saying something or thinking something. We damn well offended someone because me and you have two different opinions.
Yep.
It's either they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm with Andrew, I'm not against violence, or I'm against violence. Or they're going to be like, nah, fuck you, Andrew, I'm with JD. Like, fuck these stupid businesses, whatever. Like, fuck it, Like, we damn well offended someone, whoever's listening to this. Like, guarantee you can't take both sides.
But the side that we know that we're taking is that
we want change.
We want change. And we don't want change to better the white community. Because if you throw that all lives matter bullshit at us, fuck you. Because
my God.
I hate that thing so much. The best way to explain it is like, if a person's house is on fire, you're not going to fucking go to every single house and get people out of their houses because all lives matter. No, you're going to fucking go into the house that's burning and save them first, and save them only because they only need to be saved. And I feel like right now, our Black brothers and sisters are trapped in a house that's on fire, and we need to help them. So get out of here with your all lives matter bullshit. Get out of here with your blue lives matter bullshit, because that is not the problem. That is not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to highlight that our Black brothers and sisters are suffering and that we need to help them.
I was literally about to bring that up. I was going to be like, you know what I fucking hate? When, like, it's a peaceful protest or whatever, and someone has a Black Lives Matter up, and then some other ignorant piece of shit just comes out saying, no, fuck your Black Lives Matter sign. All lives matter. I fucking hate that.
Fuck that shit. Oh, God, it is the worst. Like, we're not saying all lives don't matter. But
that's not the fucking problem here, though.
One of the greatest things that said is all lives don't matter until Black Lives Matter. And right now we're taking a stand and we're saying Black Lives Matter, and we're standing there. Like, there's no discrepancy. I don't know about Andrew, but I'm specifically stating right here, right now, that I stand with the Black Lives Matter movement because Black lives do matter and they haven't mattered in the past. I'm going to take steps. I'm going to try to educate myself on how to be anti-racist and look out for microaggressions and aggression in general, and speak out. I might not have the right words. I might stumble. I might make mistakes. But the fact is that I know where I stand in my heart, where oh God, I'm getting a little emotional. My Black brothers and sisters that are out there that are fighting, I'm standing with them and I'm standing by them, because I know I support that their lives do matter. And I think that's the only thing here that I know for a fact Andrew and I stand on, is that we do believe that Black lives do matter. If you don't believe that, don't listen to our podcast again. We don't need you.
I think you worded it perfectly. I'm 100% with it. But again, I'm not fully educated on it yet. I might stumble too. I might fall, make mistakes about it, but I'm gonna do my best to educate myself little by little as much as I can and go from there.
Yeah, so with that being said, honestly, this episode was a very tough episode for Andrew and I to record. Like I said just 2 minutes ago, I'm feeling very emotional about it because I feel so confused and so conflicted, and I'm so uncomfortable and embarrassed about the things that I have done. But know that I'm trying to make things right, and I highly recommend that you do that as well and check your privileges, because once I checked mine, I'm like, I feel like the worst fucking person ever. And I took that upon myself to reach out to my friends and being, hey, listen, I don't want you to educate me. I don't want you to teach me your ways or tell me your stories of police brutality, or I'm not reaching out to them to have them educate me. I'm reaching out to them telling them I'm with you, I stand with you, and if you need anything from me, I'm always here to support you. And that's what I believe Andrew and I are saying with this podcast, is that we're saying that if you feel so inclined to send us a message and let us know and provide resources, we're more than happy to take those and learn for ourselves. But just know that if you guys, specifically, if you Black brothers and sisters that, have a relationship with us and want to reach out, just know that we will always be there to support you. We would always be there to listen to what you have to say. And if you guys need anything, Andrew and I will try our absolute best to get you the support and the help that you need, because if you listen to our previous episodes, that's what our friendship is based on. Andrew and my friendship is based on the fact that we're always here to support each other, and that is extended to our Black brothers and sisters and just our listener base in general. So if you guys need help and need resources and want to learn more about this issue and the Black Lives Matter movement, where can they find us, Andrew, and how can they reach out to us?
You guys can contact us through Gmail with the handle of Up Until Now Podcast, and also our Instagram. We check it daily. We try to post as much as we can with the same handle, Up Until Now Podcast. We just want to let you guys know that we're here for you. We're here for, like we said, the voiceless. Even though it's a small amount, but we'll do the best that we can. We're just two friends living life.
If any of you out there know of, more resources that we can use, please send it our way. Again, at the handles and at the places that Andrew has just told us, Up Until Now Podcast at gmail.com and Up Until Now Podcast on Instagram. Please send us all those things. Want to give a last thank you to Eric for letting us use the music that we've been using in this podcast. If you want to follow him, he's on ch.tunes on Instagram and SoundCloud. And we will be providing links in our bio on Instagram. There is a link tree. If you go down there, you can visit all the things that we have talked about in the past and where to find our podcast. And under that link tree, we will have a card that you can click on that brings you to a list of things that you can do to educate yourself, to donate, to really further and better yourself as an ally of the Black community. So we highly recommend that you go check that out. If you stuck with us this far, just know that this is not going to be the last episode that we talk about this. And we thank you for taking a listen and educating us and forcing us to become better people. So
Before we go and say our final goodbyes, you just want to let everyone know that mine and JD's prayers goes out to all the family and friends who have been affected by this, and just want to tell everyone to be safe and hang in there.
Definitely. Thank you for bringing that out, Andrew. Really appreciate it. So thank you, everybody, for taking a listen. And if you guys have any questions, we will be more than happy to take them and provide you with the resources that you need. With that all being said, thank you again, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.